Hi, world. Welcome to the Secret Life of Numbers podcast. This is our first episode, our teaser, episode 0, and what I hope will be a long line of episodes. I guess what we wanted to talk about here is what we do. So, Lindsay, what do we do here?
Thanks, Levannia. Welcome, everyone. So here at the Secret Life of Numbers podcast, we dissect everyday numbers and statistics to find the stories behind them. Each episode, we take a number or statistic and we break it down. We tell you where it comes from and what it means for you. And along the way, our hope with this podcast is that you'll be inspired to think more critically about the numbers you hear in your own life.
What does SPF really mean, for example? Or kills 99.9% of germs. Where does that come from? These are just some of the things we're hoping to talk about, or we will talk about in our first season. I'm Levannia, and I happen to be a data scientist. I suppose my role is to be explaining the numbers in our episodes.
So, Levannia, for those in our studio audience who aren't sure what a data scientist does, even though it was, I believe, the sexiest job of 2019.
Was it?
What does a data scientist do?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what a sexy job qualifies as. However, I'd say it's really an intersection between statistics, computer science, and communication. Because you're looking at data or you're looking at numbers, you're trying to decipher what those numbers have to say, and then you're communicating it to those around you.
So it's kind of like what we do with the podcast.
Kind of like what we do with the podcast, yeah. I am uniquely positioned. And Lindsay, what do you do?
Well, hi everyone, I'm Lindsay, and I'm your data translator, which is not an official job title.
Not yet.
We're working on it, but basically I explain the meaning behind the stories that we share with the numbers. So Levannia will get you to the number, uncover all of the math behind it, the stories of where did that number come from, and then I'll tell you, well, what does this number mean for us? So basically I'm just here for when Levannia gets too technical on us.
I can get a little technical, I will admit. All right, so if you're still with us because you haven't yet decided if you want to listen to the podcast, here's a little bit more information about us and our hopes for it.
We thought it'd be kind of fun for this first teaser episode to talk a little bit about why we wanted to start a podcast and a little bit more about our backgrounds. So Levannia, take it away. Why start a podcast?
So when I was getting my master's, which happened to be in data science, we had a panel of industry professionals come to talk to us about the data science field. And one of these panelists, he was like, you guys are all kidding yourselves. You think you're getting degrees in data science, but really you're getting degrees in communication because it's your job to not only understand the data, but also explain it to us. And then I started working. And I realized how right he was. And then the pandemic came. And then I realized how much those around me didn't fully understand the numbers that they hear. And I really just wanted to help explain them.
And we are so lucky that you had that idea and that experience.
So, Lindsay, I've talked a bit about my background. Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
When we first met, Levannia was getting her master's and I was doing my undergrad in microbiology. And then I just finished my first year of medical school. So it's really interesting because we learned a bit about like knowledge translation, which is kind of the process of disseminating what, the scientific or medical knowledge that we have to people at a level that's accessible for wherever they're at, depending on the audience. And I think this podcast is a really great application of knowledge translation. So it's been really fun to kind of meld the small amount of knowledge I've acquired in 1 year with the podcast. So Lev, what's your kind of hope and vision for the podcast?
I guess I really hope that people will listen to us talk about these numbers and look at the numbers that they hear and start thinking about them critically themselves and asking questions.
Yeah, that's kind of our shared vision, really, for the podcast, I think. And like, I just remember when I was in undergrad, especially taking a few classes, not related at all to microbiology, but they were related to like conservation biology and spatial ecology, which
Mm.
is the ecology of landscapes, which
Ooh.
is super cool. I could geek out about that forever. But they were courses that really challenged me to think about definitions. And like, I remember the first day of class, like my teacher, we walked in and she's like, the question on the board, and this is like a 400 level, 500 level, like graduate level course. And the question that we spent an hour discussing was, what is a forest? It made me think about like, okay, well, how many trees per unit area would we consider a forest? Why is one tree on a meridian in the highway not a forest, but then up on the hills, all the pine trees, that's a forest? And thinking about those questions and how we arrive to the answers that we do and the kind of conventions and the numbers that we see.
And I think as well that we have this belief that math is hard or that math is inherently difficult and you can't
Yeah.
figure it out if you haven't studied it or if you don't have a degree in it. But I do have a degree in math or at least data science, and I can tell you that certainly there are pieces of it that are difficult, but the math that you see in your everyday life is really quite attainable. It's simple and profound math.
I agree. It's nice to kind of share that world vision. So we hope you'll join us every Monday on the Secret Life of Numbers podcast. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we'd also like to give a special thank you to Julian Bertino, who does our sound editing and original music. We hope you'll tune in next time at the Secret Life of Numbers, where the numbers can run,
But they can't hide.